Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel Dr. Deepak Lectures. I am Dr. Deepak, an USMLE aspirant just like you guys. So, we have discussed in our previous two videos about the general microbiology. Today, we will conclude this part by discussing very important another topic, that is bacterial pathogenicity and virulence. So guys, let's start this video. Okay. Today we will discuss the culture media in brief. Okay, so culture media may be defined as a medium which may contain certain supportive nutrients for the growth of selected bacteria, desired group of bacteria. So what are the different classes of the culture media? The most important and the most basic is simple simple or basal media, right? Simple or basal media, this contain minimum ingredients, right? It contains minimum ingredients and and support the growth of non-fastidious organism. Non-fastidious non-fastidious organism. And uh, it act as a base for the preparation of many other bacteria. So it is a base for other media, you can say. That is simple or basal media. Simple or basal media. Example of simple or basal media is peptone water, right? And another example, nutrient broth. Nutrient broth, right? N B. So peptone water and nutrient broth. Nutrient broth or NB, it is nothing but peptone water, that is PW. Peptone water is PW. So PW plus meat extract. Okay, nothing but PW plus meat extract. That is called the nutrient broth. These are examples of simple or basal media which has minimum ingredients. Okay, and it is used to study the bacterial growth curve, right? Bacterial growth curve. There is one more thing, that is called nutrient agar. Nutrient agar is nothing but nutrient broth plus 2% agar. Nutrient agar is nutrient broth which was peptone water plus meat extract, and nutrient broth plus 2% agar is nutrient agar. It is used to perform perform various biochemical test. We will study some biochemical tests like oxidase reaction and catalase reaction, and there are some slide agglutination test, right? Slide agglutination test, we will study that. So to perform the various biochemical tests, nutrient agar is used. It is also used to study what? The colony morphology, right? Various bacterial colony morphology can be studied with the help of nutrient agar. And demonstration of pigments, right? We will also see there are certain bacteria which are characterized by certain pigment formation. They can be demonstrated using the nutrient agar, right? And nutrient agar is basically a semi-solid agar. It is a semi-solid medium, sorry. It is a semi-solid medium, and it demonstrates the motility also, act as stock culture maintenance media also. So that is an example of simple or basal media. Next is our enriched media. Second type is enriched media. And enriched media is solid in nature, right? It is solid in nature. It is nothing but your basal or simple basal media, right? Basal media plus blood, or it may have serum, or it may have egg in it. The combination of basal media plus blood, serum or egg is called enriched media, which is solid in nature. So Enriched media can be of various types, right? It can be of various types, right? Like it may be simple blood agar, it may be simple blood agar, it may be chocolate agar, chocolate agar, chocolate agar, or it may be Loeffler's serum, Loeffler's serum, and it may be blood culture media, right? It may be blood culture media. So these are examples of enriched media. Blood agar is nothing but nutrient agar. We have seen the nutrient agar is nutrient broth plus 2% agar. That is also example of basal media. So nutrient agar plus 5 to 10% of sheep blood, right? Sheep blood, that is called blood agar. And it is used. What are the uses of blood agar? Very common use of blood agar is to see the hemolytic property of the bacteria. Hemolytic property, right? Hemolytic property, like alpha hemolysis, beta hemolysis, and gamma hemolysis that we see in the case of streptococcus group of bacteria. Most common, it is the most common medium used in diagnostic, most common used in diagnostic microbiology, right? Diagnostic microbiology. And another is chocolate agar. Chocolate agar does not contain chocolate. The name has been named because of its appearance, its color. When this blood agar, when this blood agar, which contains nutrient agar plus 5 to 10% sheep blood, is heated, right? When it is heated at 70 degree Celsius temperature, it turns into chocolate color because of the lysis of RBC, okay, RBC lysis, RBC which was present in the sheep blood, that undergo lysis, and the color of the blood agar changes to chocolate color, so it is called chocolate agar. It is brown in color, right? It is brown color. And it is used for what? Which bacteria? Haemophilus influenzae, most commonly Haemophilus influenzae, and also used for Neisseria, Neisseria group of microbes like Neisseria meningitidis and Neisseria gonorrhea. So chocolate agar is used for Haemophilus influenzae and Neisseria. Blood agar is used for showing the demonstrating the hemolytic property of the Streptococcus. So these are important questions. Hemolytic property shown by blood agar, Haemophilus influenzae, Neisseria, they are isolated using the chocolate agar. So these are questions for MLE, for catching or clinching the diagnosis in a clinical vignette type of questions which are put up in MLE. So chocolate agar and blood agar. Now we are going to see Loeffler's serum slope. Loeffler's serum slope. Loeffler's serum slope is used to isolate the simple Corynebacterium diphtheria. Corynebacterium diphtheria, right? It contains serum. What is the content of the Loeffler serum slope? The name itself implies its meaning, serum. So it contains serum, right? Loeffler serum slope is for Corynebacterium diphtheria. And blood culture media, which may be monophagic or biphagic, it is used for isolating the microorganisms from the blood. Okay, example of blood culture media is brain heart infusion broth. Brain heart infusion broth, right? Brain heart infusion broth. Okay, brain heart infusion broth. It may be monophagic or diphagic. Next is your third class of culture media is enrichment broth. Enrichment. And enrichment broth is not solid in nature, it is liquid. Usually it is liquid in nature. Liquid media with some inhibitory, I will say inhibitory agents, right? Inhibitory agents. With some inhibitory agents isolate the pathogen from clinical specimen. So we use the enrichment broth, which is a liquid media with some inhibitory agents. Obviously we are adding some inhibitory agents for isolating the pathogen from the clinical specimen, which also contain normal flora. So the like specimen like stool stool specimen or sputum specimen, right? So that when we have to use a stool or a sputum specimen to isolate certain group of bacteria, we use enrichment broth. Example: tetrathionate broth. Tetrathionate broth. I am giving some examples: tetrathionate broth, selenite F broth, selenite F broth. Then we have alkaline peptone water, alkaline peptone water, right? Tetrathionate broth is for Salmonella typhi. Similarly, selenite F broth is for Shigella, and alkaline peptone water is for Vibrio cholera, right? Tetrathionate broth for Salmonella typhi, which causes enteric fever, right? Typhoid fever or enteric fever, and Shigella is isolated using selenite F broth. Vibrio cholera, which grows mainly in the alkaline media, highly alkaline pH. For that we use alkaline peptone water, right? Then there is another culture media, we call it selective media. Why it is called selective media? First, selective media is also solid in nature, and selective media because it contains some inhibitory substances that inhibit normal flora in the specimen and allow the desired pathogen to grow, right? So it is called selective. So it also contains some inhibitory substance or inhibitory agents. Okay, inhibitory agents, just like enrichment media. Example of selective media, there are various examples like LJ media, right? LJ media, TCBS media, DCA or XLD media. There is potassium tellurite agar, potassium tellurite agar. LJ media is used for Mycobacterium tuberculosis. TCBS media is used for Vibrio species. DCA or XLD media is used for Salmonella and I guess Shigella, right? And potassium tellurite agar, Corynebacterium diphtheria. Corynebacterium diphtheria, we have seen there is also Loeffler's serum slope. But Loeffler's serum slope is an example of enriched media, right? Loeffler's serum slope, that is also used for Corynebacterium diphtheria, but that is a enriched, okay, enriched or solid media. And we are also using selective media for the Corynebacterium diphtheria, that is potassium tellurite agar. Okay, potassium tellurite agar. There is one more media, if you might have heard, Wilson Blair bismuth sulfite. Wilson Blair uh, bismuth, okay, bismuth bismuth sulfite, that is used for Salmonella typhi, right? So we are using tetrathionate broth for Salmonella typhi, we are using Wilson Blair media for the Salmonella typhi, LJ media, TCBS, DCA media, and potassium tellurite agar. These are all examples of selective media which contain certain inhibitory agents which selectively inhibit the growth of the unwanted pathogens and help outgrowing the desired pathogen. That is why we call it selective media, which is also a solid media. Then our next category of media, fifth category, is transport media. Transport media is used to transport the clinical specimens. Bacteria don't multiply in this media, they only remain viable, and we use some buffer, you know, buffer or salt or antibiotics, right, in the transport media to make the desired pathogen viable, but does not allow the bacteria to grow in it, or doesn't allow other contaminant to grow in the transport media. So transport media is used to transport the clinical specimen. Can you give some examples of transport media? Yes, like Stuart media. Stuart media is an example of transport media. Carrie Blair media. Carrie Blair media. Stuart media, Carrie Blair media. There is Venkatraman Ramakrishnan, VR media. VR media. There is thioglycolate broth. Thioglycolate broth. Right? These are examples of transport media. Stuart media is used for gonococci. Right? Any specimen which is supposed to contain the Neisseria gonorrhea or gonococci microbe, we use Stuart media as a transport media. Carrie Blair media used for Vibrio cholera. Vibrio cholera. It can also be used for Salmonella and Shigella, right? Salmonella and Shigella. VR media, easy to remember. VR media is also used for Vibrio. Vibrio. So V, right? Easy to remember. VR media. Then we also use thioglycolate broth media for what? What kind of microorganism? Obligate. Yes, obligate anaerobes. Examples of obligate anaerobes we have already seen. Mnemonic is A, B, C as given in your first aid book. A stands for Actinomyces israeli, B stands for Bacteroides, and C stands for Clostridium. Right? These are obligate anaerobic microorganisms, and they can be transported in thioglycolate broth media for obligate anaerobe. Then there is last one, and not last but the second to last is differential media. Differential media differential media, or we can call it indicator media, right? Indicator media. What is the role of differential or indicator media? This is, as the name itself implies, its meaning different. It is used to differentiate between the two groups of bacteria using the indicator, some dye, some coloring agent, some dye or color that is used to differentiate between the two groups of bacteria. Most important example is McConkey's agar. McConkey's agar, very 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 important from examination point of view. McConkey's agar is used with blood agar, right? Usually it is used with blood agar, right? McConkey's agar is used for isolation of enteric gram negative bacilli, right? Enteric gram negative bacilli. And I would like to comment on the McConkey's agar, that McConkey's agar is not only a differential or indicator media, it is also a selective media, right? McConkey's agar is a selective media as well as differential media. S for selective, D for differential, right? McConkey's agar, very important from examination point of view. It is used to differentiate between the two categories of bacteria. I know you already know it. Remember, lactose fermenter from lactose non-fermenter. Non-fermenter. Lactose fermenter and lactose non-fermenter. There is a group of bacteria which can ferment the lactose and produce the gas or acid and turn the colony pink. Okay, turn the colony pink. Example is E. coli. E. coli. On the other hand, non-lactose fermenter, they will render the colony colorless. Colorless. Example, Shigella, right? Shigella. And lactose fermenter colony is pink in color. So it here, because they are changing the color of the culture media, so they are acting as a differential media or indicator media. But at the same time, McConkey's agar, if you see, McConkey's agar contains certain antibiotics which inhibits the growth of specific undesired microbes. So they also act as a selective media. What are the antibiotics in McConkey's agar? Vancomycin, colistin, we have nystatin, and we also have trimethoprim, right? Trimethoprim. Vancomycin will inhibit gram positive bacteria. Colistin will inhibit gram negative except Neisseria. Okay. Uh, sorry. This is for Thayer Martin media. This is for Thayer Martin media. Okay. So McConkey's agar is used for differentiating the gram negative enteric bacilli. It acts both as a selective and differential media, right? Another example of differential media is CLED agar. CLED agar. I guess it is not as important, but still I am mentioning it because it contains cysteine. C for cysteine, L for lactose, and E for electrolyte, D for deficient, right? So it is cysteine lactose electrolyte deficient agar. It is an alternative to the combination of this McConkey plus blood agar. It is also used for the same purpose, and it can prevent the swarming of the proteus, right? CLED agar. But we will focus on the McConkey's agar from examination point of view, right? So our next media is anaerobic culture media, the last one. Anaerobic anaerobic culture media, right? Anaerobic culture media, which takes up the oxygen, create lower redox potential. It takes up oxygen, and when it will take up oxygen, this culture media will absorb the oxygen. It will lower down the redox potential, right? We will not go into the detail of redox potential, but we will keep it in mind that it is an anaerobic culture media, so it obviously takes up oxygen and create a reduced redox potential and allow the growth of obligate anaerobe, right? So it this culture media makes the surrounding favorable for the growth of anaerobic obligate anaerobics like clostridium, right? So anaerobic culture media example, a very famous culture media, that is RCM broth. RCM stands for Robertson's cooked meat. Robertson's cooked meat. So it contains meat. Yes, Robertson's cooked meat media or broth. Thioglycolate broth. Right now we studied na thioglycolate. Thioglycolate broth is also a transport media for obligate anaerobe. Thioglycolate broth, right? For obligate anaerobe. It is also a transport media, not only a anaerobic culture media but also a transport media, right? So we have covered basically all the culture medias. Now we will see some diagrams. Let me show you. Yeah, this one. Here we can see peptone water, right? This is your peptone water. This is your nutrient agar. These are some basic medias. We have gone through that. This is your blood agar, very common. And this is chocolate agar. Chocolate agar, which is used in for the isolating Haemophilus influenzae and the Neisseria group of microbes. Then we have LJ media for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, LJ media, Lowenstein-Jensen media. This is TCBS media, okay. And here we have brain heart infusion broth and biphagic media, brain heart infusion broth plus agar, so it is called biphagic. This is monophagic media, biphagic media. The C is Robertson's cooked meat media, RCM, Robertson's cooked meat media, which is an anaerobic nutrient culture media, Robertson's cooked meat media. Then there is thioglycolate, this D, thioglycolate broth, which is also a transport media, okay, for obligate anaerobic organism. Both are for obligate anaerobic organisms. Then we have DCA, XLD, right? DCA, this is your DCA. Then there is XLD agar. Most important, C, you can see McConkey's agar for lactose fermenter, right? Lactose, non-lactose fermenter, and lactose fermenter McConkey's agar. CLED agar. CLED agar is a substitute for McConkey's agar, but it is deficient in electrolyte. It contains cysteine. It contains cysteine and electrolyte deficient agar, and it has a characteristic feature that it also inhibits the swarming growth shown by Proteus mirabilis and Proteus vulgaris, Proteus group of microbes. CLED agar is an alternative for McConkey's agar, right? So we have seen the this thing, nutrient agar. Okay, so now we will move on to this very important table which has been taken from the first aid book, our first aid book, which shows spatial culture requirements, right? We have already seen Haemophilus influenzae needs chocolate agar for its isolation, and chocolate agar has spatial spatial nutrients like factor 5 and factor 10. Factor 5 is NAD plus and factor 10 is hematin, right? Similarly, Neisseria gonorrhea, Neisseria meningitidis, they need Thayer-Martin media. Just few minutes back I was mentioning Thayer-Martin agar. Thayer-Martin agar is a selective media. It selectively favors the growth of Neisseria group of drugs by inhibiting the growth of other gram positive and gram negative except the Neisseria and also the fungus. So we have certain inhibitory agents in the Thayer-Martin agar to inhibit the growth of those undesired pathogens like vancomycin for gram positive bacteria, trimethoprim and colistin for inhibiting the growth of gram negative organisms except the Neisseria, and nystatin to inhibit the growth of fungi, right? Fungi. So that is an example of selective media. It is a selective media, Thayer-Martin agar. Similarly, Bordetella pertussis, which cause whooping cough, 100-day cough in the adults, it is isolated using Bordet-Gengo agar. Bordet-Gengo. So easy to remember, Bordetella pertussis, Bordet. Bordet-Gengo agar, Bordet for Bordetella. It contains what? Potato extract and antibiotics and blood and charcoal. Potato extract, right? Cornybacterium diphtheria. Cornybacterium diphtheria needs blood tellurite agar, and just we studied Loeffler serum slope, which contains serum. Blood tellurite agar, BTA. Blood tellurite agar for Cornybacterium diphtheria. Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis needs LJ media, famous LJ media or Middlebrook medium. Middlebrook medium, and one is rapid automated broth culture, right? Then Mycoplasma pneumonia. Mycoplasma pneumonia needs Eaton agar, right? Eaton agar, and it needs cholesterol, right? Mycoplasma pneumonia needs Eaton agar, and special requirement is cholesterol. Then comes lactose fermenting enterics. We studied right now that in order to isolate the gram negative enteric bacilli like E. coli, Klebsiella, right? E. coli, Klebsiella, then Salmonella, Shigella, okay, which are categorized as lactose fermenter, non-lactose fermenter. We have McConkey's agar. McConkey's agar, when these lactose fermenter bacteria grows in the McConkey's agar, they cause fermentation of lactose producing acid, which in turn change the color of the colony to pink, like E. coli. But Salmonella, Shigella, these are non-lactose fermenter, right? These are non-lactose fermenter. I would like to add one more thing, that gram negative enteric bacilli, these gram negative enteric bacilli, they can be isolated using three types of media, right? One is your McConkey's agar, the most common and very popular McConkey's agar. What is another group of bacteria? That is EMB. EMB agar. EMB stands for eosin methylene blue agar. Eosin methylene blue agar. In eosin methylene blue agar, eosin, as we know, is red in color, and methylene blue is blue in color. So it is basically a reddish or red bluish colored agar. When the color of the agar after the growth of the growth of the culture or growth of the specimen becomes red black, then, right, what I'm trying to say, EMB agar may show three kinds of results. It may become red black, it may become purple, or it may be colorless, right? When it is red black, it means E. coli. When it is purple, it means it is Klebsiella. And when it is colorless, then it means Salmonella or Shigella, right? So EMB, our EMB, eosin methylene blue agar, is for isolating the gram-negative enteric bacilli, right? Gram-negative enteric bacilli. So we are using McConkey's agar, EMB agar, and the third one is Hecton enteric agar, HEK, Hecton, Hecton enteric agar, right? So we have three culture media for isolating gram-negative enteric bacilli like E. coli, Shigella, Salmonella, and Klebsiella, and Proteus, that is McConkey's agar, eosin methylene blue agar, and Hecton enteric agar, right? There is one more culture media that is called BCYE. BCYE, that stands for buffered charcoal yeast extract agar. Buffered charcoal yeast extract agar. It is a charcoal yeast extract agar which is buffered with the cysteine and iron. Cysteine and iron. It is used for four classic bacteria isolation, and we used to remember it by the mnemonic, famous mnemonic, which is given in our first aid book. That is Ella siblings. Four Ella siblings built the Sistine Chapel out of charcoal and iron. What is the meaning of Ella siblings? The four classical bacteria which comes in this category of this category of culture media are Brucella, Francisella, Legionella, and Pasturella. Their name ends with Ella, ELLA, Ella. So we remember by a mnemonic that four Ella siblings. Four Ellas are Brucellas, Francisella, Legionella, and Pasturella. Right? There are four Ellas. So for Ella need cysteine. Important is cysteine. Cysteine is the buffering agent in charcoal yeast extract agar along with the iron. The last one is Sebraud's agar. Sebraud's agar is used for isolation of the fungi, right? Sebraud's agar is used for isolation of fungi. Okay, now we will come to the our next important topic, that is pathogenicity mechanism, the virulence factor, right? The virulence factor or pathogenicity, which promotes the evasion of the host immune response. We know that pathogenicity or virulence means simply evasion of host response. There are various mechanisms. In our first aid book, only three things have been mentioned. One is protein A, right? Another is IgA protease, and one is M protein, right? Actually, these three are very important from a melee point of view. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the pathogenicity mechanisms. So I am putting up few more slides in the same regard. Pathogenicity mechanism can be remembered by this mnemonic: eat rice, right? Eat rice. E stands for enzyme mediated tissue damage. A stands for adherence. There are some appendages in the bacteria which help in adhering to the cell surface, adherence. T stands for toxin induced localized and systemic effects. Toxins may be endotoxins or exotoxins. We have already seen, and we will see once again. R stands for resistance to antibiotics. I stands for invasion and growth in the normally sterile sites. C stands for circulation via the blood or other means of spreading from the primary source of infection, primary site of infection. And E stands for evasion of the host immune response by means of capsule, certain enzymes like catalase enzyme or intracellular growth and other mechanisms. So we will see one by one in elaborate manner. Enzyme mediated tissue damage. See, tissue damage is caused by bacterial products like tissue damaging metabolites, may be some acids, some gas, or some byproducts may be formed during the growth of the bacteria. These degradative enzymes and cytolytic exotoxins, they are released by many bacteria. We have to remember some important examples which are important from examination point of view, like Clostridium perfringens. Clostridium perfringens produce alpha toxin. Example of alpha toxin is lecithinase. Lecithinase is the enzyme which act on the phospholipid bilayer cell membrane. Lecithin, they act on the lecithin and they destroy the cell membrane, right? Similarly, streptococci have various enzymes like hemolysin, streptokinase, hyaluronidase. Similarly, staphylococci have hyaluronidase, lipase, enterotoxins, and fibrolysins. These sort of enzymes are degradative enzymes or cytolytic exotoxins. Exotoxins disrupt the normal cellular metabolism by damaging the cell membrane. Similarly, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, they are a kind of facultative intracellular microorganism. They can disrupt the cell function. Bacterial growth on top of the tissue can damage and disrupt the tissue function. Like example, coagulase negative staph, catalase positive and coagulase negative staph, or viridans streptococci, they cause a subacute endocarditis, right? Subacute bacterial endocarditis, right? Then comes the adherence. Adherence to the cell surface, epithelial or endothelial cell linings of urinary bladder, or say intestine, blood vessels, oropharynx, and other structures, they can prevent the bacteria from being washed away. They prevent the bacteria from being washed away and allow them to colonize these sites. Example of adherence factor is pili, right? Pili may be of two types. Common pili, I know we have gone through it in previous lectures. Common pili and sex pili or F pili. There are various names for it. Common pili, or also known as fimbri, they are the major structures involved in adherence to the adherence of the enteric bacteria and Neisseria gonorrhea. Bacteria that are deficient in the pili or fimbri, they may possess some other cell adhesion molecules like lectin protein, or they may contain lipotecoic acid, characteristic feature of the gram-positive bacteria. Okay, and or they may contain slime. These adhesion molecules, whether they are present on pili or elsewhere, they interact with the receptors on the host cells. Okay, then we have the another mechanism for pathogenicity, and that is antibiotic resistance. It can spread through the bacterial population by transfer of antibiotic resistance genes, or antibiotics may eliminate and competing the non-resistant organisms. Next is invasion. Invasion refers to the bacteria breaking through the tissue barriers or and colonizing the tissue. Some enteric bacteria have mechanisms of invading various portions of GIT, right? GIT. Invasion of normally sterile sites, even by normal microbial flora, can cause the disease like bacteremia, meningitis, encephalitis, and pneumonia, right? Like Neisseria meningitidis, Streptococcus pneumonia. Colonization of tissue can cause its destruction or dysfunction, or can be a source of spread in the body or release of the toxins called endotoxins, right? Then is your circulation through the blood, that is bacteremia, presence of bacteria in the circulation. Primary mechanism for spreading the bacteria throughout the body is bacteremia. Tissue damage promotes the bacterial spread. We have seen that tissue damage is in itself is a mechanism for the pathogenicity, and tissue damage itself leads to bacteremia, especially if the blood vessels are damaged. Then is escaping the host attempts at elimination. Means bacteria tries to evade the host defense mechanism, and it allows it to remain in the host for a longer period of time, like capsule. Capsules we have seen many bacteria or capsulated microbes, capsulated bacteria. Capsulated bacteria, they have poor antigenicity because capsules are poorly antigenic in nature. They deter the phagocytosis. They are antiphagocytic in nature. The main mechanism of virulence provided by the capsule is deterrence of phagocytosis. They inhibit phagocytosis because they are slippery. They tear away. They protect against the degradation in phagolysosome of macrophages and neutrophils. Right. Some of the encapsulated bacteria like Streptococcus pneumoniae and Neisseria meningitidis, they show their virulence because of presence of the capsule. Biofilms, we have gone through this topic. Biofilm is a viscous, sticky wave of polysaccharide which contains millions of bacteria which can adhere to the plastic surface like the indwelling catheters, or they can also cling to the damaged human tissues. Biofilms. Okay, biofilms also allow the bacteria to show its pathogenicity. Example of biofilm is dental plaque. Dental plaque is shown by Streptococcus mutans, right? Streptococcus mutans. Pseudomonas aeruginosa also forms the biofilm. Streptococcus mutans, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, right? Then comes intracellular growth. Intracellular growth without inactivation, especially in the macrophages, right? There are examples of obligate intracellular organisms which can't grow outside the living cell. Okay, initially these bacteria were considered like a virus, right? They were considered as virus, but later on it came to the knowledge that they have the cell wall structure, they have metabolic process similar to the bacteria. They were categorized as bacteria later on. Example of obligate intracellular bacteria is Rickettsia, Chlamydia and Coxella, right? Rickettsia, Chlamydia and Coxella burnetii species are examples of obligate intracellular parasite. We can remember it by a mnemonic called really chilly cold. Stay inside the really chilly cold days. That's a mnemonic in our first aid book. But facultative intracellular bacteria. A mnemonic of the facultative intracellular bacteria is some nasty bugs may live facultative. I can some nasty bugs may live facultatively, right? Facultatively. So we can remember by this mnemonic. Some stands for salmonella, right? And for this N stands for the Neisseria, Salmonella, Neisseria. B stands for Brucella. M stands for Mycobacteria. L for Listeria. And then F for Francisella. Another L for Legionella, and Y for Yersinia pestis. So we have the some facultative intracellular bacteria. Facultative means they can also grow outside a living cell, but they prefer to live inside the living cell. So these kind of bacteria, obligate or facultative intracellular bacteria, they inhibit the phagolysosome fusion. They inhibit the phagocytosis, right? They protect themselves by staying inside a living cell. They protect, for example, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It inhibits the phagolysosome fusion. It protects the outer layer and resistance to lysosomal enzymes, which allow them to replicate within a living cell, right? Even you will see some chronic stimulation of immune response may result in granuloma formation. These intracellular bacteria, evading the phagocytosis by staying inside a living cell, chronically stimulate the immune response, like they can result in the generation of interferon gamma responsible for the granuloma formation and result in the chronic granulomatous infection. Granulomatous infection. A typical example is tuberculosis, right? So that is a mechanism. Next is reduction of phagocytic cell function, that is inhibition of phagocytosis, right? Inhibition of phagocytosis by antiphagocytic capsule and certain cell surface protein. Example is very important. Example is M protein. M protein is represented by Streptococcus pyogen, right? M protein जो है that is represented by M Streptococcus pyogen, that is group A Streptococcus, right? group A Streptococcus, and it shares similar epitomes to human cellular proteins. They show the phenomena of molecular mimicry. Molecular mimicry. I am talking about M protein. M protein, represented by group A Streptococcus, shows the phenomena of molecular mimicry. Right? Molecular mimicry, and possibly it underlies the autoimmune response which is seen in the acute rheumatic fever. Similarly, we have seen that Mycobacterium tuberculosis evade the phagolysosomal killing of the phagocytosed bacteria by staying inside the cell, inhibiting the phagosome and lysosome fusion. Similarly, Staphylococcus aureus, it causes catalyst detoxification of the peroxide enzyme, right? Similarly, killing of phagocytic cells by exotoxins. Some exotoxins like streptolysins of the Streptococcus pyogen, streptolysins of Streptococcus pyogen, and lethal toxin of the Bacillus anthrax, alpha toxin, which is a super antigen of the Clostridium perfringens. I guess it is a super antigen. Well, we will see later on. So alpha, sorry, not super antigen. Alpha toxin is an example of the cell membrane lytic enzyme or exotoxins, right? So alpha toxin of Clostridium perfringens, streptolysin of Streptococcus pyogen, or lethal toxin of anthrax. These are three examples of the exotoxins which can kill the phagocytic cells, right? These are very important. Then inactivation of antibodies. Antibodies like IgA antibody degrading protease. As I had mentioned that our first aid book has mentioned the IgA protease as a very important example of the virulence factor. IgA protease produced by some bacteria permit them to colonize the mucosal surface. Example of the bacteria producing IgA protease is Neisseria gonorrhea, Neisseria meningitidis, Streptococcus pneumonia, and Haemophilus influenzae. You can easily remember these three examples by remembering these are examples of capsulated uh, bacteria which especially invade a person with asplenia, right? Asplenia or splenectomy. We had seen in our previous lecture video, that a person who is supposed to undergo the total splenectomy for some reason need to be vaccinated preoperatively against these three bacteria, groups of bacteria: Neisseria, Streptococcus pneumonia, and Haemophilus influenzae. These are the three encapsulated microorganisms which have IgA protease enzyme, which inactivates the IgA antibody. So we need to vaccinate these patients, these individuals, right? Why? We will see later on why we need to vaccinate. IgG binding surface proteins like protein A of Staph aureus. Staph aureus has protein A. It binds to IgG antibody. It protects the bacterial cell from antibody action, right? So we have seen inactivation of antibody. Next is inhibition of the complement action. Antigen in the lipopolysaccharide of the gram negative bacteria, right? LPS, lipopolysaccharide, which is a part of outer membrane of the gram negative bacteria, characteristically present in the gram negative, absent in gram positive bacteria. They may protect the cells from complement mediated lysis by preventing access to the membrane, right? LPS, it has a very important component called lipid A. Lipid A, also known as endotoxin, because it has endotoxic activity, right? It has various endotoxic activities like pyrogenic activities, B cell mutagenesis. It has some other potent endotoxic activity. The same LPS protect the bacterial cell against the complement mediated cytotoxicity. Then is antigenic variation by DNA rearrangement, involves homologous recombination. Right, it is also a type of virulence factor, or you can say it is a means of evading the host cell immune response shown by some bacteria like Neisseria gonorrhea. It shows variations of pilus protein and thereby evade the host immune response, right? Okay. we'll see next slide. Okay, next is pathogen associated molecular patterns. Pathogen associated molecular patterns, they are repetitive microbial structures. They bind to the toll-like receptors and other pathogen pattern receptors, okay, on various cells, and they activate the macrophages and dendritic cells, which are examples of antigen presenting cells, APCs, macrophages and dendritic cells, and promote the acute phase cytokine release, right? Examples of pathogen associated molecular pattern is peptidoglycan, very typical, peptidoglycan, lipopolysaccharide, lipoteichoic acid, teichoic acid, right? Which we can easily remember. Peptidoglycan is a cell wall component, mucopeptide, and liposaccharide is present in gram-negative bacteria. Lipoteichoic acid is present in gram-positive bacteria. These are examples of pathogen-associated molecular pattern. They bind to the toll-like receptor, okay, or present on the macrophages and dendritic cells, which are example of antigen-presenting cells, and they cause the release of acute phage cytokine release. Now we will come to endotoxin. Endotoxins Endotoxins are typical of gram-negative bacteria. Endotoxins are nothing but lipid A, component of LPS. We know that LPS has three parts, right? One is lipid A, other is core polysaccharide and saccharide, and the last one is somatic or O antigen. Somatic or O antigen, right? Some bacteria may lack this somatic or O antigen, where this LPS is known as LOS. Example is Neisseria. Sorry, uh, Neisseria, right? LOS. LOS stands for lipo-oligosaccharide. Lipo-oligosaccharide means the same lipopolysaccharide but lacking the O antigen present in Neisseria, right? So the lipid A component of the LPS is endotoxin. It shows endotoxic activity present in the cell wall of gram-negative bacteria and released during the early stages of infection with the gram-negative bacteria. It initiates the complement and clotting pathways. We will see LPS is a strong PAMP, right? Right now we saw pathogen associated molecular pattern, and it binds to toll-like receptors on the various cells like macrophages and dendritic cells and induce the release of mediators which cause sepsis, right? LPS is strong pathogen associated molecular pattern. Exotoxins, right? Very important topic, and we will see in a tabular form taken from the first aid book that exotoxins are very important from examination point of view, which are secreted by both gram positive and gram negative bacteria. But endotoxin is characteristic feature of gram negative bacteria. Exotoxins are secreted by the cells. They are not released when there is cell lysis, which is seen in endotoxin, right? So exotoxins are cytolytic. Exotoxins are tissue degrading enzymes. Next is AB toxins. AB toxins means what? Most of the exotoxins except the exotoxin produced by the Bacillus anthracis, right? Bacillus anthracis is an exception. Bacillus anthracis. Most of the exotoxins, over 90% of the exotoxins have two components, A and B component. A stands for active and B stands for binding. The B component of the AB toxin facilitates the endocytosis of the active component of this toxin. B binds to the cell surface and facilitate the endocytosis of the A component, right? So this is called AB toxin. AB toxin is also known as two component toxin. Two component toxin, right? Most of the bacteria which produce exotoxins, they are AB toxins or two component toxins. Exception is Bacillus anthracis because here it is three component. We will see lethal component and edema component, everything. So, and then we have superantigens. Superantigens are exotoxins which activate T cells in the absence of the antigen, right? Superantigens are exotoxins which can activate the T cell even in the absence of the antigen by cross-linking the T cell receptor and class 2 major histocompatibility complex on the antigen presenting cells like macrophages and dendritic cells and natural killer cells, right? APCs, example of APCs, macrophages or dendritic cell, right? APC cells. So super antigens are, why we call super antigens? They are super duper antigens. They are those exotoxins which can activate the T cells even in the absence of the real antigens, right? Because these exotoxins cause a cross linking between the T cell receptors and class 2 MSC complex present on the antigen presenting cells. We'll see these things in detail in immunology. And they cause inappropriate release of or exuberant release of cytokines, overwhelming cytokine release like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, which have important role in fever, right? And tumor necrosis factor alpha and other cytokines, and with possible life-threatening autoimmune response and death of the T cells. Then there is toxic shock syndrome toxin, which is produced by Staphylococcus aureus, TSST1, from Staph aureus, and staphylococcal enterotoxin and erythrogenic toxin of Streptococcus pyogenes, group A Streptococcus pyogenes. They are the prime examples, right? They precipitate the shock-like condition, right? Then what are the clinical outcomes of endotoxin activities? We have seen endotoxins. Endotoxin cause the activations of macrophages and dendritic cells. These are the antigen presenting cells, right? Their activation through the toll-like receptors, right? They cause the endogenous release and induction of endogenous pyrogens like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha and prostaglandins, and cause a fever, right? They increase the capillary permeability, which is the reason for hypotension, fall in the blood pressure, leading to the kind of septic shock, right? Septic shock. So they cause fever, they cause septic shock, they cause initiation of the complement cascade, and a classical and alternative pathways of the complement cascade leading to shock. They cause initiation of blood coagulation cascade, right? They also trigger the tissue factor and indirectly coagulation cascade, leading to what? DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is an example of consumptive coagulopathy. And the combination of this fever, hypotension, shock, and multi-organ failure, MODS, is known as the septic shock, right? Septic shock. So in short, these endotoxins present in gram-negative bacteria lead to septic shock by various mechanisms. Now we will see, as I had told you, there is a very good tabular representation of the various exotoxins given in our first aid book. I hope you can see, or we will enlarge this too, right? I think it's not fitting in our slide. Anyways, we will try to see the bacterial exotoxins. We are studying now the exotoxins very quickly. Exotoxins, they have various mechanism of actions. We saw the mechanism of action of endotoxin. They trigger the macrophages and dendritic cells. They trigger the complement cascade and they trigger the coagulation cascade. But how does the exotoxin work? Exotoxin works by various mechanisms. First of all, they can inhibit the protein synthesis. They can increase the fluid secretions. They can inhibit the phagocytic action. They can inhibit the release of certain inhibitory or excitatory neurotransmitters. They can also cause the lysis of the cell membranes. They can act as a super antigen. We will see one by one. Protein synthesis inhibitor. Example of protein synthesis inhibitor exotoxin is Corynebacterium diphtheria, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Shigella species, and enterohemorrhagic E. coli. Enterohemorrhagic E. coli, which produces Shigella-like toxin. So Corynebacterium diphtheria and Pseudomonas aeruginosa, They are exotoxin known as diphtheria toxin and exotoxin A respectively. They simply inhibit or inactivate the elongation factor 2 necessary for the protein synthesis. Corynebacterium diphtheria causes diphtheria. Diphtheria is characterized by pharyngitis and formation of the pseudomembrane in the throat, severe lymphadenopathy in the neck called the bull's neck, and myocarditis. Very important. Pharyngitis, bull's neck, pseudomembrane in throat, and myocarditis. Pseudomonas aeruginosa causes host cell death. Shiga toxin. Shiga toxin is a and the enterohemorrhagic E. coli Shiga-like toxin. They have similar mechanism, right? They what they do, they cause the inactivation of the 60S ribosomal subunit by removing the adenine from the ribosomal RNA. We can simply remember they inhibit the protein synthesis by inactivating the 60S ribosome subunit, larger subunit, right? And Shiga toxin causes a GI mucosal damage to the GI mucosa, leading to dysentery, and they also cause the hemolytic uremic syndrome by release of certain cytokines, right? Hemolytic uremic syndrome. Enterohemorrhagic E. coli, which has Shiga-like toxin, that also enhances the cytokine release and precipitate the hemolytic uremic syndrome. But unlike the Shigella, enterohemorrhagic E. coli doesn't invade the host cells. Okay? And there is a specific serotype of the enterohemorrhagic E. coli called O157H7 that causes hemolytic uremic syndrome. So the Shigella toxin and enterohemorrhagic E. coli both causes hemolytic uremic syndrome. Another type group of exotoxin based on their mechanism of action is the exotoxin which cause increased fluid secretion. Easy to remember. Those which cause a dysentery, diarrhea, dysentery. Enterotoxigenic E. coli, right? Enterotoxigenic E. coli, Bacillus anthracis, and Vibrio cholera. Enterotoxigenic E. coli, it is very important because it produces two types of exotoxins. One is heat labile, other is heat stable. Easy to remember by the mnemonic. Heat stable, stable on the ground, right? Stable on the ground. So we can remember it by stable on the ground means the heat stable enterotoxigenic E. coli exotoxin increases cyclic GMP level, whereas heat labile enterotoxigenic E. coli exotoxin increases cyclic AMP level, right? So labile in air and stable on the ground. This is a very good mnemonic to remember because we can obviously slip in during our exam that hit labile toxin and hit stable toxin. Hit labile toxin increase cyclic AMP, right? And hit stable toxin increase cyclic GMP. So stable on ground and labile in air, right? And they lead to watery diarrhea. Bacillus anthracis has anthrax toxin. Anthrax toxin also increase cyclic AMP level and by mimicking as an adenyl cyclase enzyme and likely responsible for characteristic edematous border of the black eschar in the cutaneous anthrax. In the cutaneous anthrax, black eschar is there, and the edematous black eschar may be because of the cyclic AMP, raised cyclic AMP by anthrax toxin. Vibrio cholera, cholera toxin. Cholera toxin also increase cyclic AMP level, right, and lead to increased chloride secretion in the gut and water efflux, leading to rice water diarrhea, voluminous rice water diarrhea. Another category of exotoxin is the toxin which inhibits the phagocytic ability, Bordetella pertussis. Bordetella pertussis release pertussis toxin which inactivates the inhibitory G subunit of the G protein coupled receptor, that is GI. GI is inhibited, leading to increased level of cyclic AMP, right? And that causes a whooping cough. Even though the exact mechanism of whooping cough is not known, but it is supposed to be because of raised cyclic AMP level. Okay, then is those exotoxins which cause inhibition of the release of the neurotransmitter. Very easy to remember. There are two conditions which are associated with a neurotransmitter related problem, that is tetanus and botulism. Tetanus caused by Clostridium tetani, which releases tetanospasmin exotoxin, and Clostridium botulinum, which causes botulism, produces botulinum toxin. The difference between tetanospasmin and botulinum toxin is that tetanospasmin causes the inhibition of the release of inhibitory neurotransmitter, that is GABA and glycine, right? Inhibition of GABA glycine. And Clostridium botulinum prevents the release of acetylcholine, right? One inhibits GABA and glycine, another inhibits acetylcholine. Inhibition of GABA and glycine cause the what? Spastic paralysis, right? Spastic paralysis, and that will manifest in the form of opisthotonus, rhizus sardonicus, and the trismus, that is called lockjaw in the tetanus, typical of tetanus. Whereas the inhibition of acetylcholine neurotransmission transmitter release at the level of neuromuscular junction (NMJ) leads to flaccid paralysis, or also known as floppy baby, right? So we have another slide here. We will see the exotoxins which cause the cell membrane lysis. Examples are Clostridium perfringens and Streptococcus pyogenes. Clostridium perfringens produces alpha toxin. Alpha toxin has phospholipase activity, lecithinase activity, damage the cell membrane, and cause the degradation of the phospholipids, leading to myonecrosis, that is the gas gangrene, and hemolysis, that is double zone appearance in the hemolysis on the blood agar. Similarly, Streptococcus pyogenes causes release streptolysin O, which degrades the cell membrane, causes lysis of the RBCs, contributes to the beta hemolysis, and that produces the antibody against the streptolysin O, which is known as anti-streptolysin O. ASO, very important. ASO titer is used to diagnose the rheumatic fever. Acute rheumatic fever diagnosis is by ASO titer, right? Now another group of exotoxin is superantigen. Superantigen which cause shock. We have just seen superantigens are produced by Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus pyogenes. Staph aureus produces TSST1, that stands for toxic shock syndrome, like toxin 1, which cross links the T cell receptor to the MSC class 2 on the antigen presenting cell, and that results in the overwhelming production of the cytokines like interleukin 1, interleukin 1, interleukin 6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, interferons maybe, and that causes the shock like condition, that is fever, rash, shock. It can also cause scalded skin syndrome, right? Exfoliative toxins and food poisoning because of heat stable enterotoxin. Right? Heat stable enterotoxin is an exception of exotoxin, because usually exotoxins are heat labile, but exception is heat stable enterotoxin. And one more exception is the enterotoxigenic E. coli. Enterotoxigenic E. coli produces a heat stable toxin that causes increased cyclic GMP level. These two are the exceptions of. One is enterotoxigenic E. coli heat stable toxin, and another is enterotoxi sorry enterotoxigenic exotoxins, right? These are the two examples of exotoxins which are heat stable exotoxins. Otherwise most of the exotoxins are heat labile. Okay, next is, what are the differences between exotoxins and endotoxins? So it is now very easy to remember after going through the exo and endotoxins in depth. See, exotoxins is produced by both gram positive and gram negative, but endotoxin is peculiar of gram negative bacteria. Exotoxin is secreted by the cell. On the other hand, endotoxin is not secreted. It is released in the body after the cell lysis. So there is a difference. Exotoxin is secreted. Endotoxin is not secreted. Exotoxin is polypeptide in nature. Endotoxin is lipid A, which is a component of lipopolysaccharide. Location of genes which are responsible for the formation of exo and endotoxins. So gene for exotoxin is plasmid, extrachromosomal DNA, or bacteriophage. Endotoxin is by bacterial chromosome, which are supercoiled double-stranded DNA. Adverse effect of exotoxin is very high. On the other hand, adverse effect caused by endotoxin is low. Clinical effect by exotoxin is various. It may range from the diarrhea, dysentery, or whooping cough, or it may lead to voluminous rice water diarrhea. It may lead to, diphtheria, which is characterized by pharyngitis, pseudo membrane formation in the throat, and myocarditis and bull snake. It may lead to the hemolytic uremic syndrome by Shigella and Shigella-like toxin. It may lead to tetanus, diphtheria. It may lead to botulism, right? It may lead to the gas gangrene. So there are so many manifestations, but endotoxin will lead to typically fever, shock, hypotension, DIC, and MODS, or you can say sepsis, right? MODS and sepsis. MODS stand for multi-organ dysfunction syndrome or sepsis. Mode of action, again we have seen there are various mode of action. In the case of exotoxin, they may inhibit the protein synthesis, they may cause the excess of fluid secretion, they may cause the inhibition of the phagocytic cells, they may cause inhibition of the release of certain neurotransmitters like GABA and glycine, or the acetylcholine. They may cause the lysis of the cell membrane like Clostridium perfringens and the Streptococcus pyogenes, or they may act as a superantigen. But the mechanism of action is simple. In the case of endotoxin, release of cytokines and tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1 and 6. Antigenicity, see, exotoxins induces high titer of antibody formation called the antitoxin, which is not the case with endotoxin. Yes, exotoxin can be used for vaccine production because they are usually heat labile. They can be subjected to heat so that they retain their immunogenicity, but this loses its toxicity, which is known as toxoid, right? And toxoid can be used for vaccine production. Endotoxins can't be used for vaccine production. Heat stability and typical disease: tetanus, diphtheria. Tetanus, diphtheria, cholera, botulism is caused by and exotoxins, but endotoxins typically cause sepsis or meningococcemia. Okay, now our last slide is with endotoxins, the mechanism of sepsis or meningococcemia caused by the endotoxins. Endotoxins are basically LPS, lipopolysaccharide. A part of the LPS is lipid A, okay, which is present in the outer membrane of the gram-negative bacteria, both the cocci and bacilli bacteria, and they are released upon the cell lysis or by living cells by the blebs which detach from the outer surface membrane, and they exert three main effects. They cause a macrophage activation, they cause complement activation, and tissue factor activation. So endotoxin, that is lipid A, cause macrophage activation leading to the overwhelming cytokine release. Interleukin 1 and 6, which cause fever. Tumor necrosis factor alpha also causes fever and hypotension. Nitric oxide, which is also known as endothelial derived relaxation factor, is a potent vasodilator, and it causes vasodilatation and fall in the blood pressure, that is hypotension. Complement activation leads to release of the complement component like C3A and C5A. We know that C3A is a potent histamine releaser. It causes histamine release and hypotension in edema. C5A also causes histamine release, but C5A is also responsible for neutrophil chemotaxis. It's a chemotaxis factor. Endotoxin also cause tissue factor activation, and tissue factor activation leads to the initiation of the coagulation cascade, extrinsic coagulation cascade, that cause the systematic clot formation, thrombosis, right? Thrombosis and consumption of the platelets and coagulation factor leads to thrombocytopenia, right? Platelet count decreases, that is thrombocytopenia, and this all condition leads to consumptive coagulopathy, which is known as DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. That is, there is disseminated, means it is spreading in nature, intravascular coagulation, and that leads to life threatening condition. Okay, life threatening condition, that is, it can lead to death. So that is all about the endotoxin, right? Endotoxin. Here is a very small pictorial depiction of how the LPS acts or endotoxin acts, just in order to make you understand the mechanism of action of LPS. You can see here LPS acts in a multi-pronged fashion. LPS acts on the platelets, cause a release of the certain mediators from the platelets. It activates the coagulation cascade, leading to the systematic thrombosis and clot formation in DIC. It activates the complement cascade, leading to release of C3A, C5A, which causes histamine release, hypotension, edema, and neutrophil chemotaxis. LPS causes the chemotaxis of the PMN, that is polymorphonuclear neutrophils. It causes the activation of the macrophages. Macrophage activation leads to release of the cytokines like interleukin 1, tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 6, and interferon gamma also, and that causes the fever. And the endotoxin also causes the activation of endothelial cells, and endothelial cell releases various chemical mediators that cause the damage to the endothelial cells, resulting in the increased vascular permeability, leading to the leaking of the intravascular components like intravascular proteins, and the capillary becomes leaky capillary. It's called leaky capillary syndrome like condition, and that leads to hypotension. Ultimately, all these things, hypotension, fever, and DIC thrombosis, leads to shock, right? Shock. This is the end of our today's topic. We have covered the virulence factors, pathogenicity of the bacteria. We have covered various cell culture media, examples of them. We have covered the important tables from the first aid notes. In our next video, we will try to cover important MCQs which have come from the which have been framed from this topic, and then we will start our our general bacteriology one by one. Okay, thank you guys for watching my YouTube channel, Dr. Deepak Lectures. And if you really like my video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much.